At my mom's retirement party, she looked right at me, straight in the eyes, and called me a friend of the family. Not her daughter, not even her child, just a friend. People clapped politely. A few glanced at me confused, maybe waiting for the punchline. There wasn't one. I stood there frozen, my name stripped away like it was an inconvenience. My mother, in her navy blue suit, glowing under the lights of a rented ballroom, smiled like she hadn't just disowned me in front of 100 people. Her coworkers raised glasses. My aunts laughed too loud. No one noticed the shaking in my hands. Or maybe they did and chose not to look. So I looked at her. Then I looked at the mic. And I walked straight to it. If she wouldn't say my name, I'd make sure they never forgot it. The room smelled like roses and shrimp cocktail, the kind of scent that tries too hard to be elegant. Soft jazz played in the background, the kind meant to be ignored, and the slideshow of my mother's career highlights looped behind her in gentle fades. Pictures of her with clients, plaques from 30 years of service, framed articles with headlines like, "Meet the Heart of the Office." And I was there, technically. In the back, near the dessert table, holding a glass of cranberry punch that I hadn't touched. I'd arrived early like she asked, dressed respectfully, like she instructed. I even helped carry in the damn catering trays because, as usual, she needed someone in the background to make everything run smoothly. That had always been my role. The background. The first red flag should have been the name tag. All the family members had one, even the neighbors from 3 streets over. Mine wasn't at the welcome table. When I asked the intern manning it, she gave me a blank smile and scribbled one with a Sharpie. "Just write your name," she said. I should have walked out then. But no. I stayed. I smiled. I clapped when the HR rep called my mom the soul of the firm. I took pictures for people who didn't bother to learn my name. I even helped Grandma to the restroom and back while my mom accepted a bouquet with fake humility. And then it happened. My mother took the microphone. The crowd settled, drinks paused midair. She launched into her speech like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror for weeks. Stories about her first job, her proudest projects, inside jokes from office potlucks. People laughed, they applauded. Then she said, "I want to thank the people who've really been there for me. My amazing team, my incredible boss, and of course, my beautiful family." Her eyes scanned the crowd like she was searching, and then she landed on me. She smiled. "This woman right here," she said, gesturing vaguely in my direction, "has always been so supportive. She's like a friend of the family." A friend of the family. My heart hit the floor before I could even process what she'd said. The room didn't go silent. That would have been merciful. No, it kept buzzing. Applause, chuckles, a toast from someone who clearly hadn't heard. But I heard. I felt the blood drain from my face, the way it does when you suddenly realize you've been made invisible on purpose. I stood still, holding that untouched punch, hearing every word that followed through a fog of white noise. My name wasn't in the speech, not once, not even a hint that I was her child. It wasn't a mistake, it was a message. I wasn't welcome in her spotlight. I wasn't part of her polished narrative. I was an inconvenient footnote she had edited out. I looked at her, still glowing under the spotlight she loved so much. She laughed at her own joke, tucked a loose hair behind her ear, and in that moment I didn't feel sadness, or even anger. I felt clarity. So I set the punch down, walked toward the front, past the surprised looks, past the polite confusion, toward the microphone she hadn't offered me, but which I was about to take anyway. And not with a toast, with the truth. Let me know when you're ready for section 3. There was a time I thought my mother loved me the way a mother should. I remember sitting at the kitchen table when I was 7, drawing a lopsided picture of us under a tree. I handed it to her with so much pride. She looked at it, smiled, and said, "Sweetie, maybe next time try not to use so many dark colors. It looks a little sad." I was 7. It wasn't the last time she edited me. As I grew older, the edits got sharper. Less about colors, more about who I was becoming. She didn't like when I cut my hair short in high school. Said it made me look less feminine. Didn't clap when I won the debate finals. Just warned me not to get too cocky in front of boys. When I came out at 21, she didn't yell. She just blinked slowly, then asked if I could keep it private. at least around the family events. No slurs, just erasure. She always said she was protecting the image. I used to believe her. Her love had rules. Be useful, be agreeable, and above all, be quiet. I played along for years, played the peacemaker at holidays, took her shopping for Mother's Day gifts she pretended she didn't expect, helped her rehearse speeches for board meetings while she never once asked about the promotion I was up for. She'd say, "You've always been so independent, so strong," and somehow it sounded like a dismissal. When I published my first essay in a well-known magazine, she didn't mention it. But when her coworker's daughter was quoted in a lifestyle blog, she wouldn't shut up about it for a week. I used to joke about it. "That's just Mom," I'd say to friends. "She forgets things, she's awkward with affection." But it wasn't forgetfulness. It was selective memory. She remembered the parts of me that made her look good, and quietly discarded the rest. There was one birthday I'll never forget. My 30th. I just bought my first apartment, something she never congratulated me for. She gave me a gift card to a home decor store and added, "Maybe now you'll finally make your place look less like a bachelor pad." Then she clinked her glass and toasted to raising resilient women. I didn't cry then either, but I remember going home, locking my door, and deleting her number for the first time, but I always put it back in. Because some part of me kept hoping that if I stayed good, if I stayed supportive, if I showed up and shut up, maybe one day, I'd get the version of her that everyone else saw. The version that laughed easily, gave smart advice, and sent Christmas cards with perfect cursive. That version never showed up for me. Instead, she gave me invitations without RSVP lines, family photos where I stood like an afterthought, and text threads where she forgot to include me until the very end, if at all. And yet, I kept showing up, because despite it all, some twisted part of me believed the distance between us could be crossed with just the right words, but that belief shattered the moment she looked at me from that stage, in front of strangers and blood relatives alike, and said the words I'll never forget. "A friend of the family, not my daughter, not even my name. Just a soft lie for public comfort, a subtle assassination of everything I ever was to her." And in that moment, everything became clear. She hadn't lost her memory. She had made a choice. She was rewriting the past in real time, and I had a choice, too, to stay silent, or to say something that couldn't be erased. 3 weeks before the party, she called me for the first time in months. Not to ask how I was, not to see if I was eating or sleeping or breathing. She needed help. "There's a box of old HR paperwork in my storage unit," she said. "Can you swing by and bring it to me sometime next week? Just the one labeled private. Don't open it. It's mostly junk I need for the speech." I agreed like I always did, like a daughter is supposed to. The storage unit was cramped, humid, and smelled like mothballs and forgotten ambition. I found the box right where she said it would be. Old, taped at the corners, her slanted handwriting scrawled across the top in red marker. Private, retirement. I shouldn't have opened it, but something about the way she emphasized the word junk felt rehearsed, too neat, too careful. So I peeled the tape, expecting old newsletters, maybe a dusty award. Instead, I found the real resignation letter. Typed, dated, printed and signed over a year ago. It wasn't a celebration. It was a confession. No graceful exit, no triumphant send-off. Just raw honesty that never made it to the public version. A few lines stood out like glass in the sand. "I've lost touch with my team. I've made decisions I regret. I've stayed in a role I outgrew years ago. This isn't the farewell of a hero. It's the quiet resignation of someone who's tired of pretending." And then the kicker. My greatest failure hasn't been professional. It's personal. I built a legacy for strangers and forgot how to hold the ones who needed me most. I read that paragraph 4 times, my hands trembling by the end. She knew. She had always known. There, in that document, was the version of her I'd begged to see. The mother who could admit fault, feel regret, even self-reflect. But she had buried it. Literally. I sat down on the cold cement floor of the unit, knees pressed to my chest, that letter shaking in my lap. She had no intention of ever reading it publicly. She was going to bury the truth and deliver a polished speech dripping with applause-ready lines and recycled warmth. A mask for the crowd, a muzzle for me. Later that night, I tried to call her. She didn't pick up. Instead, she texted, "Looking forward to seeing you at the party. Dress classy. Don't bring up anything heavy. Let's make it a positive day." I stared at those words until the screen dimmed. Positive, classy, silent. That was her language. Keep it pretty, keep it surface, keep it safe for her. But I wasn't her clean secret anymore. I reread the resignation letter, those trembling lines she thought no one would see. And I knew. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I was going to raise her truth. The thing about microphones, they're not just tools for sound, they're permission. And that night, she never gave it to me. She never had to, because I didn't ask. As I stepped forward, I could feel every eye shift toward me. Some curious, some confused. She froze. That perfect smile dimmed, like someone had turned down the wattage behind her eyes. I didn't look at her. I looked at the mic. My heels clicked against the ballroom floor in a rhythm I would never forget. Calm, clean, certain. The kind of walk you practice your whole life and only use once. The event coordinator fumbled toward me. "I'm sorry, are you on the speech list?" I didn't answer. I was already reaching for the mic. And when I took it, the room did what it hadn't done for her all night. It went silent. I didn't start with her name. I didn't start with mine. I started with the truth. Some people retire after a long, accomplished career. Some walk away with applause, flowers, and wine-soaked tributes. And some walk away quietly because they're tired of pretending. I unfolded the letter from my bag, slowly, deliberately, as if the paper itself had weight. She took a step forward. "That's private," she whispered, loud enough to hiss, but not enough to stop me. I kept reading. "I've lost touch with my team. I've made decisions I regret. This isn't the farewell of a hero." Gasps. A hand over someone's mouth. The shuffle of a chair leg scuffing tile. But still, I kept going. I built a legacy for strangers and forgot how to hold the ones who needed me most. That line hit the air like a siren. My mother went pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. But I wasn't looking at her. I was looking at everyone else. The room of coworkers who had only ever seen the heart of the firm, now hearing the echo of the heart she'd ignored at home. I folded the letter. No dramatics, no monologue. Just, "You all came here tonight to celebrate the version of her that makes everyone feel safe. But I think you deserve to know she's more than that she's capable of honesty, and even regret." I looked at her finally. "You wrote this," I said. She couldn't speak, not a word. Her lips parted, but nothing came. I set the letter on the podium. "I'm not reading this to humiliate you. I'm reading it because, for once, I want to hear you tell the truth, even if it has to come from me." Then I stepped away. No tears, no applause, no mic drop, just silence. I walked past her, my mother, whose face was frozen in a shape I had never seen before. Not rage, not pride, something closer to recognition. And I realized something as I left that stage. She'd spent years building a name, and I'd spent just 5 minutes giving it back. Didn't stay for the applause, or the stares, or the storm that I knew would follow. I walked straight out of that hotel ballroom and into the kind of night that feels both empty and full, like something just ended, but nothing had quite begun. Outside, I sat in my car for a long time, engine off, hands still trembling. I stared at the hotel's glowing windows while the crowd inside tried to make sense of what had just happened. I imagined her scrambling, spinning a version of the truth she could live with, or maybe just sitting down in that stiff banquet chair, finally out of scripts. By the time I drove home, my phone had already begun vibrating. The texts came fast, like punches. "What the hell was that? Did you have to do that in front of everyone? You made her look so bad." One from a cousin I hadn't heard from in over a year simply read, "Wow, just wow." But the one that hurt the most was from my aunt. "You always find a way to ruin the moment." Not one person asked if I was okay. Not one person said, "You were brave." The next day, the photos started showing up online. Cropped, filtered, smiling faces, carefully framed to exclude the scene I had shattered. There was a picture of her holding a glass of champagne, grinning like the night had gone perfectly. Caption: 30 years of grace and grit. We love you, Diane. Grace and grit, sure, that was always her strength, hiding the storm, smiling through betrayal, and blaming the thunder on someone else. A few coworkers sent emails with vague sentiments like, "What you read took courage?" Some truths deserve air, but none signed their names. She never called me. Not that night, not the next morning. What she did instead was worse. She rewrote the story. By Monday, she'd sent out an email to her team thanking everyone for coming and saying how emotions can run high at goodbyes, especially when family dynamics are complex. She called what I did a difficult moment from someone close to me who's still finding her voice. She made it sound like a breakdown, like I was unstable, like I had hijacked her night because of some lingering childhood bruise I couldn't let go of. And the worst part? People believed her, because when you wear pearls and speak in careful tones and never raise your voice, people believe you. They believed her when she smiled, when she told them she and I were working through things privately, when she said, "I love my daughter, but sometimes distance is healthy." Healthy. That was the word she used for cutting me out of her speech, for cutting me out of her life. I kept waiting for a message that never came, an apology, a simple, "I see you now." Instead, I got silence dressed up as dignity. And yet, somewhere beneath all that shame, beneath the tired rage and the broken pieces of every birthday, every forgotten win, every muttered insult and disappointed sigh, I felt something else. Stillness. Not peace. Not yet. But something that whispered, "You did it. You told the truth. And no one can take that back. Because even if they deleted the photos, even if they scrubbed the captions, even if they pretended the mic had never been handed over, they heard me. She heard me. And that was the beginning of something I hadn't felt in years. Not revenge, but relief. People always think the hardest part is the public humiliation, the microphone, the stares, the fallout. But that wasn't it, not for me. The hardest part came days later when I realized she wasn't going to reach out, not even once. Because public shame fades, but private absence, that lingers. I sat in my apartment, the resignation letter still folded neatly on my kitchen table, staring at it like it might do something. Change shape, apologize, rewrite itself into the version she wanted people to hear. But it didn't. It just sat there, undeniable, signed hers. I started rereading old journals just to remind myself I wasn't making it all up, that there was a pattern to this, to her, a page from when I was 15. She said I talk too much when people are over. I think she's embarrassed by me. Another from 23. Told her I got a raise today. She said, "Well, money can't buy humility." She didn't ask how I was, just said to keep my ego in check. And one I barely remembered writing at 28. She called me dramatic for crying when Grandma died. Said she wasn't your mother, but she was the only one who ever made me feel like I mattered. That was the crux of it. My mother raised me, but she never saw me. She fed me, clothed me, drove me to school, but she never looked at me like someone she was proud of, only someone she was responsible for. And the older I got, the more I became a mirror she didn't want to look into. I didn't play the role right. I didn't dress soft. I didn't stay small. And she hated that. She hated that I challenged her, even silently, that I didn't shrink when she dismissed me, that I didn't fake smiles at family dinners after being erased from the story. She once told a neighbor I was her little storm cloud. I overheard it, laughed in the moment, but it stuck, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. To her, I was weather, unpredictable, too loud, too honest, and yet I never stopped trying. I sent flowers on her birthday every year, even when I had to call her assistant to figure out where she'd be. I mailed holiday cards with handwritten notes. I drove her to the doctor's office for her knee injections when no one else offered. I remembered her favorite candy and made sure it was in her stocking at Christmas, even the years she didn't get me anything in return. I did all of it quietly, without praise, without acknowledgement. Because some part of me thought if I just gave enough, Maybe I'd finally be enough. But now? Now I saw it clearly. I wasn't the daughter she wanted. I was the daughter she couldn't curate. I had emotion she couldn't manage, a spine she couldn't soften, a memory she couldn't silence, and so she labeled me the problem, the difficult one, the storm. But here's the thing about storms: they pass, they clear the air, they wash away the polished lies and leave nothing but truth in their wake. And if she didn't want to stand in it, that was on her. Because I wasn't going to stay small for her comfort anymore. I wasn't going to soften edges that were carved by survival. I wasn't going to apologize for being louder than her silence. It came quietly, like most endings do. No door slam, no final scream. Just a moment, still, sharp, unmistakable. A week after the party, I got a voicemail. Her voice, calm, professional, like she was delivering a client update, not speaking to her daughter. I think we both could have handled things differently, but it's time to move on. Please respect my space. Let's give this some distance. That was it. No, I'm sorry. No, I hurt you. No, I miss you. Just distance, as if I hadn't been carrying that space between us my entire life. I replayed the message 3 times, not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. She wasn't just rewriting history anymore. She was closing the book, without me. And for the first time, I let her. I didn't call back, didn't draft a long reply, didn't show up at her door with the letter or the photos or the truth she kept shoving into shadows. Instead, I took down the framed photo in my hallway, the one of us on my graduation day, her hand tight on my shoulder, like she wanted to claim the moment. I'd always kept it because it looked like love, but looking like love and being love aren't the same. I packed it away, not out of anger, but out of clarity, because I finally understood something that had taken me decades to grasp. Blood doesn't entitle someone to your heart. Family is not a free pass to your forgiveness. And love, real love, is never earned by erasing someone. I spent that weekend unplugging. No social media, no texts, just me, a stack of old letters, and a journal I hadn't touched in over a year. I wrote everything: the silence, the grief, the 1,000 tiny paper cuts that came from every time she minimized me, then blamed me for bleeding. And at the end of the entry, I wrote, "She can keep her legacy. I'm building my own." That night, I sat on my tiny balcony with a glass of wine and watched the city move. Lights flickered in a dozen apartments, lives unfolding in every window. Some soft, some fractured, some healing. And I realized I wasn't alone. There were daughters all over this world who had been cut out of speeches, out of photo albums, out of memories. Women who had been told to stay quiet for the sake of peace, to stay small for the sake of appearances, to stay grateful for the crumbs they were handed. But I wasn't staying anymore. I was choosing myself, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Choosing myself didn't mean hating her. It meant refusing to disappear for her comfort. It meant walking away from a table where I was only ever served silence. It meant burning the blueprint she handed me and drawing something real, something flawed, but mine. In the weeks that followed, I expected the loneliness to crash in like a wave, to wake up one morning suffocating in regret, to ache for a mother-shaped void I had carved myself. But it didn't happen like that. Loneliness didn't roar, it whispered. Software manageable, familiar, like an old song I used to cry to, now just background noise. The truth is, I had already lived in her absence for years. I just never admitted it. She was there, yes, in the holiday cards, the polite texts, the rare, rigid hugs. But the real version of her? The one I needed? She hadn't been there in a long, long time, so I didn't mourn her presence. I mourned the version of her I'd invented. The fantasy mother, the one I told myself would come around, would soften, would finally see me. I buried her, and after that, I got to work on something far more important: myself. It started small. I cleared out the family section of my bookshelf, old photo albums, framed quotes she loved, a pair of earrings she gave me that I'd never worn because they were never really a gift. Just a transaction, a reminder to stay in her good graces. I boxed them up, not in anger, but in reclamation. Then I called the nonprofit I'd been too scared to apply to. For years, I'd avoided stepping into work that was deeply personal, grief counseling for estranged families, because I thought it would make me unravel. But now I knew how to hold that kind of pain. I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I met with the director over coffee and handed her a resume I thought would be too bruised to matter. She read it, smiled, and said, "You've clearly lived this. That's more valuable than anything on paper." I started volunteering the next week. The work was hard, honest, raw, beautiful. People sat in circles and told the truth for the first time in decades, and I learned that healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens in witnessing. And slowly, quietly, I began to witness myself. I painted again, for the first time since college, hung up my own art in the hallway where her photo used to be, hosted a dinner party and didn't feel the need to prove anything, told friends what I needed without guilt, let myself sleep in, let myself speak up, let myself stop explaining. Because the thing about building a life on your own terms is, it doesn't shout, it hums, one soft yes at a time. I did miss her sometimes, or at least the idea of her. When I saw mothers and daughters at brunch, when I heard her favorite song on the radio, when I passed the bakery she used to take me to on Saturdays. But it didn't hurt the same, because now, when those moments came, I didn't think, why didn't she love me the way I needed? I thought, I'm okay without it. Not bitter, not angry, just free. And one morning, I stood in my kitchen pouring coffee into the mug she gave me years ago, a plain white one that said, "Best Daughter." I turned it over in my hands, smiled softly, and placed it gently in the donation box. Because I no longer needed a title she wasn't willing to say out loud. I had one of my own now: survivor, builder, author of the truth. The last time I saw her in person was 8 months after the party. It was at a mutual acquaintance's funeral, a distant family friend, neutral territory, no reason for conversation. But our eyes met across the chapel aisle, and for one quiet moment, neither of us looked away. She wore black, of course. Pearls, heels, the usual armor. I didn't move, I didn't smile, and she didn't approach me. Not because she didn't recognize me, but because she did. I wasn't her daughter anymore, not in the way she wanted, not in the way she could control. I was someone new now, someone she couldn't narrate over, and that terrified her. After the service, she brushed past me like I wasn't there. She didn't know I saw her hands trembling. She didn't know I had already forgiven her. Not in the fairy tale way, where mother and daughter cry and hug and everything is magically repaired, but in the real way, the hard way, where you forgive someone not because they earned it, but because carrying the anger costs too much to keep. I left that church lighter than I had walked in, because the truth was, I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for apologies, not for acknowledgement, not even for peace. I had stopped needing those things the moment I read her real resignation letter out loud. That letter didn't just expose her, it liberated me. Because the version of her I had chased my whole life. The warm, proud, soft-spoken mother who would say, "That's my girl," in front of a crowd? She only existed in my imagination, and it was time to stop writing her into scenes she never showed up for. The mic had taught me that. That moment, standing before a room full of people who didn't know me, holding her paper, speaking her truth, it flipped something in me. I realized I'd spent so many years waiting for someone to introduce me, to validate me, to invite me into my own story. But I was never just a guest. I was the author. And from that day on, I began writing something new. A life built without edited speeches, without omissions, without that exhausting ache of asking to be seen. These days, I laugh more, not performatively, not quietly, but deeply from a place she never touched. I mentor young women now, girls who feel too loud, too complicated, too much for their families to handle. I look them in the eyes and say, "You're not too much. They were just never enough." And sometimes, when the wind is just right, when I pass a mirror and catch myself mid-laugh, I see the girl I used to be, the one who stood in the wings, the one who waited for her name to be called, the one who was always one compliment short of being enough. And I whisper to her, "You don't have to wait anymore. We're already here." The mic may have been put down that night, but my voice, it never left, and that's the thing no one tells you. When someone removes you from their version of the story, you don't vanish. You just get the chance to write one they'll never be able to silence. I wasn't a friend of the family. I was the daughter who finally said enough. And this time, they had to hear every word.